Hey guys, how's it going? Value Venture Investing here today. So Apple just released its earnings. I had to get this out for you guys. I'm in the middle of moving here, but again, phenomenal results. Taking a look at the stock after hours, it's up about 4.31%. So a nice little bump. And we saw a lot of all-time records here. So instead of doing it on the board here today, I'm going to be doing it on my computer. Maybe comment down in the section below if you guys prefer it this way. It's been a lot easier to quickly do it this way for you guys because this is a really rushed video. So let's get right into it. I'm going to go through their earnings. We're going to look through their financial statements, give you a little commentary at the end. So this was for Q1 2022, of course. Revenue. I remember the quarter that revenue came out and it was $100 billion. It was $123.95 billion, all-time high. And this was year over year, which is, keep in mind, this is the holiday quarter, so this is a quarter where we're seeing 100 billion plus in revenue. It's still up 11% from the last record. So estimates were 119, so a huge beat there, $119 billion. EPS was another big beat at $2.10 per share versus the estimate of $1.90. And again, sequentially, the gross margin was up to 43.8%. Now, the big things you were looking at here is the iPhone revenue. And I remember the discussion with the iPhone for the longest time was like, the iPhone's dead. It can't keep growing. It can't keep growing. I mean, these have been the arguments. I've been in the stock for 10 years plus, and these have always been the arguments. That was the argument to begin with. And then it was, a slowdown in China. And so the same argument was continued again. But we saw another beat there again. This is an all-time iPhone revenue record. So I anticipated, because supply constraints, and we'll get into that in a little bit here, that this wouldn't be a great quarter. So I'm pleasantly surprised. $71.63 billion. And that's up 9% year over year. And of course, the estimate was $67.74 billion. The one sore spot here was the iPad. Now, if you watched my last video, they warned about this, and I don't know specifically what the supply chain issue was, so supply constraints because of everything that's going on right now, but they knew that this was going to happen. They said the demand was not impacted, but of course they were not able to sell as many as they wanted, so it was $7.25 billion versus $8.11 billion, a decline of 14%. So take that for what you will. The way I look at that a little bit too is that the iPads have got so phenomenally good, like the new M1 chip versus the one I have even, which is not an M1 chip. Yeah, it's, lightning faster, right? But for most people, does that make a big difference? So we're going to have to see what comes down the road in terms of innovation there. But their install base is growing as well, and we'll get into that. So that could be part of the reason for it. And, we saw the iPhone 13, of course, that was a pretty big blockbuster release, so that's why that went up. And Mac, of course, I talked about this on the last video, just they're blowing the doors off everybody else with these M1 chips, the M2 coming out. Intel's trying to catch up, so that's going to be something to keep in mind. They're saying that they're going to have the efficiency and such, power per watt. But as of now, they haven't done it. It's all talk. So the Mac revenue was $10.85 billion in the quarter. Estimate was $9.53 billion. And of course, if I go across here, see where I was at, we're up 25% year over year. And that was already a phenomenal quarter. Services revenue, we're almost at $20 billion every 3 months. $19.52 billion versus $18.64. Estimate up 24% year over year. I feel like after a while, these numbers, they just keep blowing my mind quarter after quarter after quarter. And Apple's stock price really doesn't get credit for it. It's climbed a lot lately, of course. It's come back with the market right now because there's some concerns perhaps with interest rates rising, different things with all the whole crisis that's going on right now, but we won't get into that. So everything's come down, but yeah, they've come down a little bit, but after hours are doing better. Wearables, home and accessories, again, another beat, $14.7 billion versus $14.16 billion. That's up 13% year over year. And actually, even their cash was up. $203 billion is up from $191 billion last quarter. Keep in mind, they want to be cash neutral. They're taking on debt to do so. So I'm in support of that as well. So next, we're going to go into the financials here really quick, if I can find where they're at. And we'll quickly go through these. We pretty much covered all of them. but it's interesting to see a little bit in more detail. Now, of course, this is 3 months ended year over year, December 25th, 2021, December 26th, 2020. Products revenue, 104 billion versus 95, huge increase there. Services, 19.5 versus 15.7, big. So there's your total net sales of $123 billion versus the huge 111 that we had before. Like, that was massive, right? Gross margin here, $54 billion. Again, this is why we're seeing the improved gross margin. Another one I talk about a lot, and Tim Cook actually talked about this a little bit, I'll get into this later, is research and development. I'm always talking about the research and development. $6.3 billion for the quarter versus $5.1 billion a year ago. So they just keep that. That's huge money, and they keep ramping that up. And so there was a question about that as well. I might even just go back to show you guys here. He's talking about the fact that they actually have a lot in the pipeline. I think we all know that. But when you look at the amount of R&D that they're spending, there's a lot, and there's a lot with metaverse and such, as we'll get into that as well. But that's just always something I like to watch. So the total operating expenses are 12.7 billion versus 10, so they went up, which I think is good in my opinion. Net income was $34.6 billion versus $28.7 billion, so huge beat there. And again, we've got the basic and diluted EPS that we talked about. Now looking at the net sales by the reportable segment, every segment we saw huge growth except for Japan. But I mean, like, look at America's 51 billion versus 46, Europe 29 billion versus 27 a year ago, Greater China 25 versus 21. And again, this is where we were seeing the issues before. Remember, with the trade wars and stuff like that, was in China. So that's great to see that still going. So the total net sales obviously blew the door off. Japan, I didn't get a lot of commentary as in why. I might have missed that. Comment down below, guys, if you got that, but why that one segment, but every single segment. Again, there's the revenue for the iPhone there, 71.628 billion. That was versus 65. That was a huge quarter last year, $65.5 billion. Mac, this Mac growth is crazy. It's over 10 billion, almost $11 billion now in a quarter. Of course, this was a holiday quarter. It's a good quarter, but we have to compare them year over year, right? And that's what they're doing here. iPad, this is what we talked about, 7.2 billion versus 8.4. So we saw that decline there. Wearables is actually doing very good. And Tim Cook actually talked about the Apple Watch being that 2/3 of every user that bought an Apple Watch was brand new. So that shows you how their install base is growing. That's going to be huge for the whole ecosystem. So we'll get into that a little bit as well. But 14.7 billion versus 12.9 billion, big. And services, again, the one I love so much. So that gives us the total net sales of 123 billion versus 111 billion dollars. We went into this too much here. Cash and cash equivalents. Again, you got to look at cash equivalents, marketable securities, and marketable securities long term because they're not classified as short term, and that's how you come up with that 203 billion number. I'm going to skip these a little bit. You can pause on screen here if you guys want to look at these. Nothing too interesting. They did some stuff with their commercial paper that they were talking about. Now, in terms of the cash flow statement, things that I always like to look at here is purchases of marketable securities, a little bit less this quarter. Proceeds came through a little less as well. And then also proceeds from the sales of the marketable securities was slightly more. And then the thing I also like to look at here is purchases of common stock. They purchased less, so of course, we're still in the buyback program here. And the dividends that they paid in the quarter increased as well. Going forward here, I think it was 22 cents per share next quarter if you're a shareholder. So that hasn't increased, but that's a crazy amount of money, $3.7 billion there. So now we go back here to some of the commentary that they had on the conference call. It wasn't too much, but there's a couple things that I found very interesting that I was a lot interested happy that I listened to it. 1.8 billion is their active install base now. So that's huge, and I think people don't realize the power of that in itself. What that means is if somebody has a watch or they have an iPhone, they're going to go to other services. I do, right? I do that. Other people do that. So to see that growing, it wasn't too long ago that this was just 1 billion people install base, right? So something to really watch as well. And it blows my mind that that's still growing as fast as it is. Guidance, of course, like everybody lately, there's no revenue guidance, but they did give a little bit more commentary. They're saying year over year, their next quarter rather, the March quarter will be a revenue record for that quarter as well. So that's why Wall Street's liking this news right now. Supply constraints are going to get better. They're still going to be there in March, but they're going to get better. So imagine if they didn't have supply constraints. I mean, there could be some argument that a lot of this is related to what's going on. People are going to be working from home more, stuff like that, right? But they're still having a lot of supply constraints. Metaverse, someone specifically asked about the metaverse. Of course, Apple's secretive about everything and they don't like to say anything, but Tim Cook did mention that they have an intense interest in this in terms of they have a lot of AR capabilities. We know what they have on their iPhone and stuff like that. So basically, to me, the way I read those is yes, we're going into the metaverse. Yes, we're doing that. And again, looking at their R&D, I'm sure that they're pushing into that a lot as well. And again, then he had some commentary on saying there's lots of things that they're investing in, which is great to know. We know what the Apple Car, stuff like that as well, right? So way better quarter than I thought. Actually, way better than I thought. Very impressed with it. We're going to see what's going forward with markets because they've been a little shaky lately, but it'll be interesting to see where we go from here. So I'd love to know what you guys think about this quarter. Let me know in the comments down below. Also, let me know, I'm not really set up where I'm at here, but maybe I'm going to start doing videos like this more often because it's quicker for me to get out. Life's been really crazy lately, so I haven't had a chance to do many videos at all. So I'm going to try to get doing some more of those once I'm all settled here. So let me know about that. Let me know what you guys think. That's going to be it for today, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.